I like thinking about the future, especially when it comes to chess. It's fun to speculate on just how long Magnus Carlsen will be able to maintain his coveted status as the world's strongest player. Will he still be competing 10 years from now? And if so, what will his world ranking be? Will he still be number one? If not, who will be? Well, if I had to put my money on anyone, I'd be awfully tempted to go with the 11-year-old Argentine super prodigy Faustino, who currently holds the record for becoming the youngest international master in history, which he set only last year at age 10, and who has been growing stronger by the day with a current FIDE rating of 2454. He just defeated the great Hikaru Nakamura yet again only days ago on chess.com. Now, it was a bullet game, but you'd never know it, not by looking at the quality of his moves anyway. How he is able to outplay a bullet beast like Hikaru with such accuracy in this one, inflicting upon him a dead loss position after only 16 moves, is really beyond me. I don't know how many of my viewers have ever tried playing bullet before. I've dabbled in it from time to time, and all I can tell you is that I remember a whole lot of chaos, panic, mouse issues. It barely even felt like chess. So when I see an 11-year-old play the way Faustino does in this bullet game, it's hard to wrap the old noggin around. But let's get into this game. This one's going to blow your hair back. I mean, just look what it did to me. Hikaru has the white pieces here, and he gets this goat rodeo going with e4. Faustino, hungry and fearless, responds with the godfather of sharp openings, c5, the Sicilian defense. Hikaru responds not with the most popular move knight to f3, but rather knight to c3. What is he up to? What is he building over there? Well, after d6 from Faustino, we get our answer, f4, known as the Grand Prix attack. This is an opening system that prioritizes kingside expansion over the more standard plan of striking in the center with knight to f3 followed by a quick d4. Next is knight to c6, knight to f3, and now g6, which is a fairly typical way to meet the Grand Prix attack. In fact, g6 is pretty much my go-to method for developing the dark squared bishop in most Sicilian positions, where white is not optimized for a kingside pawn storm, as is the case here. Hikaru can no longer play f3, which means it's going to be harder to play g4, supporting a pawn going to h5, along with the move g5, as is normally played in the Sicilian dragon variation. Play continues bishop to c4, bishop to g7, d3, e6, a strong move, blocking the white sniper's access to f7, planning to develop the knight to e7 as opposed to f6, where it would be blocking the dark squared bishop. This also supports a potential d5 at some point. Hikaru castles, we have knight g to e7 per the plan, and now for a provocative move, f5, which will almost certainly look familiar to anyone who has ever faced the Grand Prix attack before, as it is perhaps the most thematic move of the entire opening, offering black a pawn, which Faustino now captures with e takes f5, but after queen to e1, looking for some kingside action along these dark squares, Faustino has the good sense not to lock in his pawn surplus with the move f takes e4, as this would run into knight to g5, hitting f7 3 times, to which there is no good defense. If the pawn is pushed, then of course there's knight to f7, forking queen and rook. Faustino instead opts for h6, preventing any knight to g5, at which point we get our first significant inaccuracy of the game. Best for white is to just work on completing his development with bishop to d2. This is the best square for the bishop, since if bishop to f4, then black can get some kingside expansion with the move g5, attacking the bishop, followed by f4. If bishop to e3, then g5 is good there as well, again planning f4 with tempo. But Hikaru now decides it's a good idea to capture on f5. All this really does is help black get another piece into the game with the recapture bishop takes f5, after which Faustino is no longer behind in development. So what does Hikaru have for his sacrificed pawn? Well, not a lot, besides a few tricks that Faustino is not about to fall for, beginning with knight to h4. This is a move that Hikaru was apparently counting on to give him some compensation, as he's now threatening to capture twice on f5, since the knight on e7 is pinned to the king and therefore not defending. But this can be easily answered by simply castling. Now, why Faustino didn't play this, and what Hikaru's follow-up would have been if he had, I couldn't tell you. But here, black is just winning. If knight takes f5, then the knight can recapture, being no longer pinned. Now, was Hikaru planning to sack the exchange with rook takes f5, g takes f5, and then queen to g3, pinning the bishop on g7 and so threatening bishop takes h6? I don't know. But black can easily defend with king to h7, and white's got nothing. Whatever the case may be, Faustino, in the game, after knight to h4, instead of gaining a clearly winning advantage by simply castling, decides to play knight to e5. Okay, he has blocked the e-file, unpinning his e7 knight, enabling him to meet Hikaru's next move, knight takes f5, with knight takes f5. Only trouble is, this allows Hikaru to now deliver a check with bishop to b5, which cannot be blocked, unless of course you want to give up the queen, since the knight on e5 is now pinned to the king. So Faustino must move his king, he puts it on f8, after which black is still better having that extra pawn, but because he can no longer castle, white does have some compensation. Hikaru's best move now is knight to d5. Why? Well, it is a hole in black's position, making it a nice post for his knight, and it prevents black from taking more of the center himself with the move d5, which would have been a good response to Hikaru's next move, bishop to a4, looking to reroute to b3 to get lined up on f7 along with that rook on f1. Okay, there is some tactical potential there, but nothing for black to really worry about. He's got the knight on e5 defending, as well as preventing any g4 to kick his knight off f5. The engine is still recommending that black play d5 here, or even h5, the old Alpha Zero special, just sending out that lone foot soldier to try to induce some weaknesses around the white king. Faustino plays knight to d4 though. Okay, it is a nice central post. Maybe he wants to have the option of capturing white's bishop if and when it goes to b3, but after Hikaru's response, bishop to e3, black's advantage is beginning to dissipate. White is now threatening to simply capture on d4, which would damage black's pawn structure. So how to respond? Well, you could make some backwards move like knight to c6, bolstering your knight on d4, but this gives up a nice central post on e5 while removing some defense from f7. That's not ideal. You could put the knight back on f5, hitting the bishop, but after bishop to f4, black's position has repeated while white has made progress, as he's now got his bishop developed. That's no way forward, so what's tried is knight to g4, hitting the bishop that way, while opening the diagonal for the bishop on g7, adding defense to the knight on d4, which brings us to a rare position where I'll wager that the majority of chess players watching this video will be able to find a move that is superior to the one that Hikaru plays now. What would you play here as white? And as a bonus question, what is black's biggest threat here? Best is to just move the bishop to f4, since that's the most active square. Bishop to d2 is not bad either. And to answer the question, what is black's biggest threat? Well, if white were to play something pointless, like rook to d1, then black can win material with knight takes c2, forking queen and bishop, since after bishop takes c2, there's knight takes bishop on e3, when the queen may not recapture, lest she be pinned to her better half with the move bishop to d4. So always good to be on the lookout for these tactical opportunities involving the open diagonal to your opponent's king. But getting back to the game, where after knight to g4 from Faustino, Hikaru now commits a serious blunder by capturing the knight on d4, allowing bishop takes d4 with check, which makes available this nice g7 square for the black king. And so after king to h1 and king to g7, Hikaru does now get to put his bishop on b3, where it can no longer be captured by a knight. I guess this was the whole point of capturing on d4. He's now attacking f7 twice, but that's a threat that is easily answered with Faustino's next move, f5. White is now totally losing. Black has the extra pawn, his king is safe, he's about to play rook to e8 with tempo on the white queen, which Hikaru would surely love to be able to put on d2, connecting his rooks, but then black has knight takes h2, when the king cannot recapture, or else queen to h4 is checkmate. So the white queen really needs to keep guarding against queen to h4, as long as black has his knight sitting on g4 and his bishop on d4, which is why Hikaru now plays h3. He wants that pony out of there. But now we get a very nice in-between move, rook to e8, attacking the queen. Again, if queen to d2 is played, then the black queen comes into h4, pinning the h3 pawn to the king, allowing his knight to remain on g4, and threatening things like rook to e3 with the idea of sacrificing on h3. So again, white should not give up control of this diagonal, which is why the engine is saying that white's best move in this position is knight to e2, which is pretty sad looking, but white does have a sad position, and sad positions call for sad moves. Hikaru thinks he can get away with playing queen to g3 though, which for a hot minute looks pretty decent. Pause the video and see if you can work out exactly what is wrong with this move. Black's best response, which I'm sure many of you found, is rook to e3, attacking white's queen, which is almost trapped. The only square it can move to is f4. Now this was not played in the game, but the simplest way for black to win here is probably just bishop to e5, forcing white's queen to either c4 or a4, since those are the only squares that are not attacked. So after, let's say, queen to c4, we have queen to h4, threatening queen to g3, followed by mate on h2, or rook takes h3, which would force mate even quicker. Black doesn't even mind that white has queen to f7 check here, since after king to h8, white has no more good checks, and according to the engine, is now subject to a checkmate by force in another 6 moves. Now let's take a look at what was played in the game. Instead of moving his attacked queen to f4, Hikaru decides to try to block with rook to f3, which is also losing. Pause the video once more if you'd like to try to figure out why. Black's only winning move, now played by Faustino, is bishop to e5, officially trapping Hikaru's queen. Every square is covered, and he can't even block with his rook since it is pinned to the queen. So what's played is rook takes e3, the bishop of course takes the queen, the rook takes the bishop, the attacked knight on g4 goes to e5, leaving Hikaru with a losing material deficit, being a pawn down and having only a rook and bishop for his lost queen. Hikaru does play on for a bit, might as well, it is a bullet game after all, so finding some trick to turn the tables with is far from unthinkable. We have knight to d5, queen to h4 attacking the rook, it goes to e3, rook to f8, rook to f1, f4, just looking to decimate the white king's pawn cover with f3 next. Hikaru prevents it with rook to e4, pinning that pawn to the queen while attacking it with the third piece. g5 adds some defense. We have knight to c7, looking for a fork on e6. Faustino takes notice and gets his king out of the way with king to h8. Knight to e6 comes anyway, attacking the rook. It goes to f6, allowing a little tactical shot with knight takes c5. Since the recapture, d takes c5 does remove defense from the knight on e5, which is now picked up. So Hikaru has won a pawn, but it's not very relevant, since Faustino can now play his f3. Now capturing on f3 is of course going to result in the loss of the h-pawn, so that's not going to end well. What's tried is bishop to d5, but after f takes g2 check, bishop takes g2, rook takes f1 check, and bishop takes f1, we have queen to f4, attacking both bishop and rook. Hikaru throws in a check, the king goes to g7, king to g1 defends the bishop, next is queen to d2 going after some pawns, rook to e2 defending, queen to c1 attacking b2, the pawn is pushed, queen to a1 attacking a2, that pawn is pushed. We have queen to d4 check, king to h2, and now h5, getting that pawn majority rolling in the direction of white's king. Next is bishop to g2, attacking the pawn on b7, queen to f4 check, king to g1, b6, getting the pawn out of harm's way. Hikaru now plays rook to e4, attacking the queen, but allowing Faustino to grab a pawn with queen to c1 check, bishop to f1, and now queen takes c2. Hikaru could play rook to e7 check, followed by rook takes a7. It certainly would have been better than the movie plays, b4, since after c takes b4, white may not recapture with his rook, or else he will lose his rook to queen to c5 check. So what's played is a5, not really sure why. Maybe Hikaru is hoping that by some miracle, Faustino will have pre-moved something and he'll be able to take on b6 and then promote his pawn. But even if Faustino had pre-moved his b-pawn all the way to the promotion square, he's going to win that pawn race anyway. But he just recaptures on a5, at which point the great Hikaru Nakamura, seeing that black's material advantage has become ridiculously overwhelming, decides he's seen enough and resigns the game. So how's about that? The world's number 2 getting taken down by a future world's number 1? Potentially. I certainly hope so. Argentina has a very rich chess history, and it would be cool to see that country produce its very first world chess champion. So anyway, thank you for watching. Consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more content similar to this on a regular basis. Don't forget to make use of that like button if you liked the video. Tell me what you think of Faustino Oro in the comments and any future predictions you might have about him or anything else, and I will see you next time.